and welcome to Dining with Dad.
Shameless cuteness there from my little granddaughter. Welcome to Dining with Dad. This episode is on my playlist, Deadly Destinations, where we visit sites where terrible things have happened. Sometimes they're murders and sometimes they're mass murders. Today I'm in Moab, Utah. I'm going to take you around the town. We're going to eat here because this is Dining with Death, and we're going to talk about the very awful events that have occurred here as of late. I'm Stacy Lee. Let's begin. If there is one thing about Utah, it's that it will ruin you on scenery forever. I've lived a lot of places and seen a lot of different areas, but the fact remains there is nowhere on earth that is more beautiful than southern Utah. Different places have different kinds of beauty, but if we're talking about red rocks and blue skies, plateaus and rivers shaped by millions of years of water and wind, and some of the most stunning and unusual rock formations on earth, it's southern Utah for the win. I was born and raised in southern Utah, and it was my home until around 2013. And sometimes it's easy to forget that people come from all over the world to see what I see every day. Moab, Utah is about a 5-hour drive from where I currently live about half of the time in St. George. Moab is in eastern southern Utah, and I'm about as far west as you can get, just 15 minutes north of Nevada. So yeah, it's a ways, but it's always worth the trip. As you get closer and closer to Moab, the red rocks grow taller and taller, and the skies seem to get bluer. Even with the overcast skies today, the colors are simply stunning. There are 3 parks in a very small area. The first is Arches National Park, which is famous for its rock formations. There is Canyonlands National Park, which is the largest national park in Utah and features breathtaking panoramic views of territory that looks at times almost alien. And then there is Dead Horse Point, which is a state park, some say a very haunted state park that we will be visiting later on an episode of Dining with the Deceased. Moab sits nestled in between all of these beautiful parks. The little town has exploded in growth in the last decade. My husband's father grew up here in Moab, and his grandfather was the town barber for many, many years before he passed away. Ed's barber shop, my husband's grandfather's shop, sat right here in this little spot that is now a salon. We drove past his grandparents' former home, and he reminisced about all the summers he spent here visiting his family. This used to be a little tiny town, and the population still reads as only around 5,000, but it in no way feels like a town of 5,000. Once the world's mountain biking and rock climbing and rock crawling world discovered Moab, it all changed rapidly. There are resort-style hotels here, timeshare condominiums, and million-dollar homes. Moab is very much like Park City, Utah, in that it does not feel like Utah. Park City and Moab have very low Mormon populations, and the religion does not dominate everything about the cities as it does everywhere else in Utah. Restaurants are allowed to sell liquor and beer more liberally. The population is much more diverse, and the vibe is that of a resort town anywhere else in America. It's easy to forget you're in Utah when you're here. It kind of reminds me of Bozeman, Montana in a lot of ways, but I have to say Moab has Bozeman beat on the scenery by a long shot. There are so many festivals and events held in Moab each year, I would need an entire hour just to go over them all. There are multiple rock crawling events where machine enthusiasts bring their specialized vehicles to participate in this extreme sport, driving their modified vehicles over places and things that really aren't meant to be driven on. There are road biking races and events like the Skinny Tire Festival, where cyclists ride through miles and miles of the most beautiful scenery on earth. There are music festivals and fashion shows, and of course there are lots and lots of mountain biking events, along with marathons and half marathons. This is a nature lover's paradise. Even for those that don't want to test their limits or compete in sport, it's a camper's haven. The multiple parks, each featuring campgrounds, provide some of the most beautiful, peaceful outdoor experiences available. And if you're looking for quiet solitude, this is your place. Hikers and canyoneers and rock climbers all travel to this spot to practice their sport and take in the beauty of nature in this one-of-a-kind place. Everywhere you look, there is something spectacular to see. Much like the Grand Canyon, the Moab area has a way of making you feel very, very small and reminding you of just how vast our world is. It's also a great reminder of the power of nature. All of this was caused by nothing but wind, water, and time. It's something I can't ever fully wrap my head around, and when I come here, I often find myself thinking about what this place looked like 1,000,000 years ago. 5,000,000 years ago? Yeah, I can't even wrap my head around that. Moab has been inhabited since around 10,000 BC. The Paleo-Indians and the ancestral Puebloans made this area their home long before anyone else knew of its existence. Over 3 million people visit this area each year to take in the sights and experience the beauty. Films like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade and Thelma and Louise were shot right here in Moab. In fact, it's the site of over 50 movies, and it's still a popular place for cinematographers and directors alike. In the 1950s, geologists discovered uranium here and mining began. Unfortunately, that led to a lot of people in this area developing cancers that are linked to uranium exposure, and most of the mines shut down, although there is still one operating in this area near Blanding, Utah. Of course, the famous Colorado River can be seen from many different places in this area and adds so much to the singular, unique beauty of this magnificent place. Unfortunately, in the last year, all of these amazing facts have been overshadowed by recent events that have taken place here in Moab. The most famous of these cases is, of course, the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case that I will be covering on my playlist True Crime Tuesday very soon. But the second recent tragedy is what brings us here to this deadly destination today. This timeline is pretty wild. For a town with very little crime and almost never a murder, to have two very serious crimes, big cases, occur here, it's unusual. But taking into account that they happened in the same week is very crazy. Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie were last seen in Moab at the Moonflower Co-op on August 12, 2021. And then later that day, just outside the entrance to Arches National Park, the now infamous car stop takes place. I'm not going to go into that today because I am going to cover Gabby Petito later on, like I said. We will do a real dive into the timeline of those events and some kind of disturbing details that have come out recently. But again, the date that this all happened was August 12th, 2021. Just 6 days later, on August 18th, 2021, there was an absolutely horrific discovery. This is Kylen Schulte, and this is Crystal Turner. They were in love and they were married and living a simple and happy life in Moab. They were drawn to each other because they both loved nature and being outdoors. They loved it so much that they chose to live in a converted van so they could be untethered and always outside. They would stay in various campsites around the area, moving between Moab and the surrounding parks. They got married in an actual treehouse in Crystal's home state of Arkansas. They were what we would call in this area crunchies, tree huggers, hippies, and they loved the life that they had created for themselves. Kylen was 24 years old, and she worked right here at the Moonflower Community Cooperative. And yes, this is the place I just mentioned, the last place in town that Gabby Petito was seen alive. Crystal was 38 years old and worked here at the Moab McDonald's. Both of the women were well known in the community, and everybody loved them. On Sunday, August 14th, 2021, people who knew Kylen and Crystal became very concerned. Both of the women had missed 2 work shifts each, and this was very out of character for them. They were both reliable employees who would never just not show up for work. People began posting their concerns on Facebook. Some people made personal posts, and others posted in Moab locals groups, stating that they were concerned about the couple and asking if anyone had seen the women. Kylen's aunt, Bridget Calvert, with whom Kylen was very close, was very concerned. Bridget received a text from Kylen a few days before the couple disappeared that was very disturbing. Kylen said that there was, quote, a creepy guy hanging around their campsite, and she said that the women no longer felt safe. Kylen said they were planning to move sites to get away from this man. This is such a good lesson in taking a photo of somebody that you feel is suspicious. I wish more people would do that. Take that photo and send it to somebody immediately. The concern grew when the couple's Harley-Davidson motorcycle was found parked in the middle of town. Kylen's aunt, Bridget, told the police that had the women decided to leave town for a few days, they would never have left the Harley sitting in the middle of town. She said that the discovery of the motorcycle was confirmation to her that something terrible had happened to Kylen and Crystal. A woman named Cindy Sue Hunter, who is a Moab art collector and art supply store owner, started to spread the word. She knew Kylen from the Moonflower Community Co-op because she shopped there, and she also knew Kylen's father because he is an artist, and Cindy has displayed some of his work in her gallery. Cindy had recently lost her own mother, and this loss compelled her to get involved in help. She drove around to the local campsites where she knew Kylen and Crystal often stayed, searching for their silver Kia SUV. Crystal spent hours and hours driving around looking for the women, and eventually she found herself in the South Mesa area of the Sal Mountains, near where she knew Kylen and Crystal had been staying. This area is about an hour and 20 minutes drive from Moab. As Cindy drove, she found what she was looking for. There, in a remote area, she spotted the silver Kia tucked in a thicket of trees away from the road. As soon as she saw the car, Cindy called Kylen's father, Sean Paul Schulte, and told him, "Hey, I found the car." With him still on the phone, she approached the car and made a terrible discovery. There on the ground was Kylen's body. Over the phone, Cindy told Kylen's father what she had found, and he told her to get back in her car and call the police, which she did. Police officers from the Grand County Sheriff's Office arrived at the scene and began to investigate. They cordoned off the area and started to search. In a matter of minutes, they found Crystal's body not far from Kylen's. Both women had been shot to death. The women had been missing for 3 days at this point and had last been seen on August 13th hanging out with friends at a local tavern. So what on earth happened here? Was this a hate crime because the women were gay? Was it a serial killer? Who would want these two lovely women dead? Grand County Sheriff Captain Shan Hackwell told the media that the deaths were obviously being investigated as homicides and that the FBI had been brought in to assist with the investigation. Word quickly spread of the double murder, and the community was shocked and saddened to hear that the missing women had been killed. Kylen's family had already endured a terrible tragedy. In 2015, Kylen's brother McKeon accidentally shot himself at age 15 with a firearm that had not been stored properly, and he was killed in that accident. People gathered to remember the two women, and the overall sentiment was that no one had ever seen two people that loved each other as much as Kylen and Crystal did. So who did this? Why did this happen? In October of 2021, authorities obtained a search warrant to review the cell phone records from a nearby cell tower at Jimmy Keene Flats. The police told the public there was no immediate danger, which seems a bit strange considering a double murderer was in the area. People were questioned and interviewed, but the investigation stalled. In January of 2022, the police announced that they had identified a person of interest, but then announced that he had been cleared. Just a few weeks ago, in March of 2022, a private investigator who has been voluntarily helping Kylen's father said he has obtained evidence showing that law enforcement has some sort of an audio recording from near the crime scene, and that on that audio, gunshots and screams can be heard. Law enforcement authorities then admitted that yes, there is an audio recording, and yes, there are gunshots on that recording. Police also confirmed that the audio was recorded on August 14, 2021, the morning after Kylen and Crystal were seen alive at the tavern. So what is this audio recording? Who is out in the middle of nowhere recording something? I'm very curious about this, but unfortunately, more details have not been released at this time. Moab runs on tourism. It is the literal lifeblood of the entire area. There has been some criticism that law enforcement is playing down the threat to the public in order to protect the area's tourism business, but honestly, I just don't think they have much to go on. Now, as if it were not strange enough that this small area had two major murder cases connected in the same week, there is in fact another strange event tied to this timeline. On August 4th, 2021, just 9 days before Kylen and Crystal were last seen, a 36-year-old man named Timothy Jordan Boone and his two dogs disappeared. One of Timothy's dogs turned up later on in Emery County, which is not far from Moab, but Timothy Jordan Boone has never been found. Timothy suffers from bipolar disorder, and he has a criminal record of arson. He was arrested in 2018 for setting 13 fires in 30 minutes near Diamond Valley Lake in California. So was Timothy Jordan Boone the strange man the women told Kylen's aunt was creeping around their campground? Could he be the killer? Or is he another victim of that same killer that murdered Kylen and Crystal? Are the two incidents completely unrelated? We just don't know. Timothy Jordan Boone, like I said, is still missing. Of course, there is also talk of Brian Laundrie, who we now know is a murderer, being in the area at the time, and some people have theorized that he killed Kylen and Crystal, but there is just no evidence to suggest that the group ever crossed paths, let alone that Brian Laundrie was their killer. As of right now, the murders of Kylen and Crystal are unsolved. Police state that they are working the case every day and that they are determined to bring the killer to justice. Kylen and Crystal were buried, and their families continue to grieve and hope that the person responsible for their loved one's death is caught and made to stand trial for this terrible act. The Grand County Sheriff's Office is asking that if you have any information at all, you call the office at 435-259-8115. You can remain anonymous. Now, as we always do on this playlist, we talk a little bit about the culinary scene in our deadly destination. This is Dining with Death. This little town has so many restaurants, it's impossible to talk about all of them. For such a small place, it's really quite impressive that so many eateries can survive here. Not only are there a lot of places to eat, there's a lot of diversity in those places. There are several breweries and pubs with classic American food, but there are also sushi restaurants and Indian food and several Thai places. We chose to have dinner here at the Spoke on Center, right smack in the middle of Moab. It's a large building with 2 stories and this great outdoor patio. It was a little chilly, but we decided to sit outside and enjoy the fresh air. We started with a couple of locally brewed beers. We had the Dead Horse Amber Ale, brewed right here at the Moab Brewery, and honestly, it was one of the best beers I've ever had. It was hoppy, but had the most wonderful floral finish and a delicate, light, clean quality. We started with the mac and cheese jalapeno poppers, and they were so good. Crispy on the outside and creamy on the inside. My little Sunny had the kids' mac and cheese, and I had a few bites. It was really good. She was so excited to come on this trip with us, and halfway through dinner she looked at me and said, "Mimi, I need to use your phone." And I said, "Okay, why?" And she said, "I need to record my food and tell you about it." And I just about died. It was the cutest thing.
How do you like your macaroni and cheese?
It is so cheesy. I like it.
And what about the onion rings?
So they were so good.
And you picked off the breading?
And I picked off the breading.
And just ate the onion.
And just like
Whose child are you? Mimi's girl?
Are you Mimi's girl? Right.
Oh, these little girls of mine are the best. I had the Hawaiian, which was pan-seared chicken breast with pineapple, Swiss cheese, sauteed onions, and ham. It was really good. And of course, I had the onion rings, and you know I had to have me some Utah fry sauce. Jason had the fettuccine with chicken, and it too was good. Actually, all of the food was better than I expected. A lot of times in touristy places, the food is mediocre, but this was solid pub food, and we very much enjoyed our meal. The Spoke has this little window that serves ice cream to people on the sidewalk, and of course, Sunny had to get a rainbow ice cream. This girl is rainbow everything. This is a great spot to eat in this beautiful little town, nestled in one of the most gorgeous areas in the entire world. Moab has great history and great people, but unfortunately, it will now forever also be known as a deadly destination. My heart goes out to the families and friends of Kylen and Crystal. I will follow this case as it progresses, and hopefully soon I will have an update saying the killer has been found and justice has been served.
Thanks for watching my Mimi show.
Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Deadly Destinations. Like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to support me. It does help. Stay safe and be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death.